I was an unfaithful wife and cheated with our daughter's dance teacher. When he found out, he made a scene at the studio and left me in misery, with the video spread all over the neighborhood. My name is Camila, I am 34 years old, and I work as a receptionist at a dental clinic. I have always been considered a proper woman who fulfilled all her obligations, a dedicated mother, a present wife, and a reliable employee. My husband, Alejandro, is 38 years old. He is a civil engineer and has always been a man extremely dedicated to his work. He is reserved, serious, and methodical, one of those who puts routine before emotions. We met in college, we dated for 5 years, and then we got married. We had our daughter, Isabella, who is now 9 years old, when I was 25. Life was organized, but cold. We did not fight, but we did not touch each other either. We lived together, but separately. Alejandro was never romantic and, I confess, I got used to the lack of affectionate gestures. He paid the bills, he took care of the house, of our daughter, but he no longer saw me as a woman. Sex became a formality, something soulless, quick, spaced out, almost a reminder that we were still married. I pretended not to care, but the loneliness of the marriage was something that gnawed at me silently. He had not been unfaithful, as far as I know, but there was no passion, no warmth, no conversation outside of daily obligations. We became two colleagues who shared the same roof, and I began to wonder if that was what they called life. It was one of those busy, routine days that I took Isabella to her first dance class. She was so excited with that pink leotard and her messy bun that for a moment, I forgot about myself. But when I entered the studio and saw Javier for the first time, something inside me woke up. He was the instructor, dark-haired, with an easy smile, a toned body, charismatic manners, and that raspy voice that seemed like an invitation. He was 29 years old, I was younger, but he radiated a seductive confidence. He looked me in the eyes. He took my hand to introduce himself, and that is when I felt the click. It was not just desire, it was the feeling that someone was finally seeing me. At first, everything was restrained. I would watch Isabellas' classes from a corner of the classroom while Javier directed the movements with a mixture of sweetness and firmness. The other mothers also adored him, but I noticed that he looked at me differently, longer smiles, brief jokes directed only at me. We started talking at the end of the class. Silly topics, but full of unspoken tension. He was always very kind, always with that intense gaze, and I allowed myself to flirt, small gestures, fixing my hair, laughing louder, praising his work, all disguised as innocence. But deep down, I knew what I was doing. At home, Alejandro did not understand anything. He would come home late, he would eat in silence, he would ask about his daughter, and he would go straight to the computer. If he saw me, he did not show it. And that, somehow, justified my internal mischief. I clung to the idea that I deserved attention, that it was not wrong to want to feel desired, that Javier was giving me what my husband had ignored for years. Of course, at that moment I did not know how far I would go, but something in me had already crossed the line. Even without undressing, the fantasy had already become an addiction. Before any kiss or touch, what betrayed me were my thoughts. I started thinking about Javier during the most intimate moments with Alejandro. I started looking for excuses to stay longer at the studio. I made up that Isabella wanted to take extra classes, and my husband agreed without a fuss, as always. And so I began to live two realities, that of the apathetic wife at home, and that of the woman who felt alive under the gaze of another man. It was not a stumble, it was a choice. A choice that began with silence and would end in screams, tears, and public shame. My relationship with Javier was gradual, but addictive. Every time I saw him, my heart would race like it had not in years. He would talk to me with an almost hypnotic attention, as if he really cared about what I was saying, even when the topic was trivial. After a few weeks, we started exchanging messages. First about my daughter's class, then about completely different things, movies, music, books. He said I had an artist's soul, that I seemed different from other mothers. And I clung to those words like someone clinging to a life raft in the open sea. I felt special, I felt seen. The conversations started to heat up. The indirect comments began, the veiled compliments, the "if I were single." I responded with laughing emojis and ambiguous words, as if I did not quite know what I was doing. The tension grew with each exchange. I spent more time choosing clothes to go to the studio than anything else. I started wearing more makeup and changing my hairstyle. Alejandro did not notice the difference. Javier did. He commented, he complimented me, he made sure to notice. With every message I sent, I felt butterflies in my stomach. It was like a late and dangerous adolescence. The moment I really thought about cheating came one night after a class. Javier called me to talk in private. He said Isabella had talent, that it would be good to invest in more rehearsals. I knew that was not all. He was talking too close, he was smiling too much. He had that look that could break any resistance. At the end of the conversation, he gently put his arm on my shoulder. A tiny touch, but I felt it deep in my soul. I went home in silence, but deep down I had already decided. The truth is, I wanted it. I wanted him to touch me, to kiss me, to desire me. And I wanted it for him. The first lie came shortly after. I told Alejandro that the studio was going to offer private classes for parents as a way to integrate them. He barely looked up from his phone. He said, "Okay," with the indifference of someone who had no idea where this was going. That was my excuse, more time at the studio, a space reserved just for Javier and me. We started meeting during class hours, when in reality, he would lock the room, turn off the lights, and put on random music just so it would not be noticed. There, far from everyone's eyes, our dirty story began to brew. The guilt came in waves after every touch, every daring exchange. I would look in the mirror and wonder who I had become. But it did not last long. All it took was for him to send me an audio message with that warm voice, telling me he had dreamed of me, that he found me irresistible, and that was it. The shame disappeared. I started to believe it was love, that it was fate. Javier said I deserved more, that Alejandro did not know what he had. And I, blind, needy, weak, accepted it as the truth. I convinced myself that I was rediscovering who I was, when in reality I was sinking into a hole that was too deep. On the outside, I was still the devoted mother, the discreet woman, but on the inside I was someone else, someone who smiled with secrets, who always waited for the next message. My friends said I was more alive, more beautiful. I would just smile. No one could imagine what was hidden behind that new sparkle in my eyes. And I had no idea that all of it, that delicious fantasy, would turn into a real, violent, and cruel nightmare. Because betrayals like mine do not end in peace, they end in scandal, shame, and loss. The first time was on a Friday. Javier said he wanted to teach me a new choreography he was rehearsing for his parents, that it would be good to record a video to use as an example. It was a lie, of course. Isabella was with my mother-in-law. Alejandro was traveling for work. The studio was empty, the lights were dim, the music was loud enough to cover any noise. When he put his hands on my waist and guided me as if we were dancing, I felt my whole body melt. At first there was no kiss, just touch, skin, a suffocating closeness. But then, without warning, he grabbed me by the back of the neck and kissed me. That kiss was the trigger for everything. The kiss became a surrender with no turning back. In a few minutes, we were in front of the mirror, half naked and our bodies pressed together. There was no romance, there was urgency, an accumulated desire, sweaty, uncontrolled. It was fast, intense, sturdy. When it was over, I was breathless, trembling. He looked at me with a triumphant smile. I was still trying to compose myself, with my panties at my ankles, my blouse wrinkled. I felt alive, I felt dirty, and yet I could not look back. He helped me comb my hair as if it were just another rehearsal, but deep down we knew the affair had begun and no one would stop us now. From then on, it became a routine. We used the class hours as a smokescreen. Isabella would train with other children and, in the meantime, Javier and I would lock ourselves in empty classrooms, dressing rooms, even in his car parked on the side street. It was an addiction, an escape. I lied without batting an eye. I said I was helping with the studio's administration, that they were preparing a festival, that the children would have extra performances. Alejandro suspected nothing. He trusted me blindly. That gave me freedom, and it also condemned me, because every lie was another stab in the back of someone who never expected to be betrayed. The messages became more explicit: nudes, audios with moans, short videos. I started to look forward to that more than any other pleasure. The cell phone became my addiction, my secret. Javier said he dreamed of taking me away, of having me all to himself, and I believed him. I believed there was a possible future in that bubble of illusion. I started to compare them. Alejandro was cold, static, predictable. Javier was warmth, risk, intensity. But I ignored the main thing: Javier had no responsibility or commitment. He wanted the moment. Alejandro, despite his flaws, was stability. He was the foundation. I preferred the fire, and I burned everything. I started to see changes in Alejandro's gaze. He would ask me more often where I was. He would check my phone more frequently. He would ask me why Isabella wanted so many extra classes. But I was already an expert at looking away. I cried, I played the victim, I told him I was suffocating, that I just wanted to spend some time with our daughter, and he believed me. Maybe because he never expected that from me, maybe because he loved me too much to believe I was capable, or maybe because he did not want to face the truth. Meanwhile, Javier and I were living the height of betrayal without fear, without shame, just desire, just destruction. I remember one day in particular. It was Alejandro's birthday. I said I had to take care of some things at Isabella's school, and I went straight to the studio. I spent 2 hours with Javier, having sex in the dressing room, moaning softly so no one would hear. Then I went home, I showered, I did my hair, and I gave my husband a cake. We sang Happy Birthday with my daughter, we smiled for the pictures, and inside I was shattered. But not because of what I had done, but because I no longer felt anything. The betrayal was already a part of me, and when betrayal becomes routine, the end is just a matter of time. Everything exploded on a normal afternoon, one of those Fridays when I thought I had everything under control. Alejandro showed up at the studio unexpectedly. He said he missed his daughter and wanted to see her dance. I froze. He never did that. That same day, Javier and I had arranged to meet quickly before class. When Alejandro walked into the reception, I was still disheveled, my lipstick smudged, and my body still warm from the minutes before. He looked at me and then looked down the hallway. Javier appeared shortly after, also a little sweaty, with his shirt untucked. Alejandro stood silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then all hell broke loose. The screaming started like thunder. Alejandro advanced down the hallway, he pushed a table, and he lunged straight for Javier's neck. He cursed, he spat, he said words I had never heard come out of his mouth. I tried to pull him away, I tried to say something, but he pushed me away with the force of disgust. It was here that you slept with that bastard while you said you were taking care of our daughter, he yelled. This, in front of everyone, parents, children, employees. Someone recorded it, of course they recorded it. In seconds, I was the neighborhood whore, the traitor, the mother who used her own daughter as an excuse to sleep with the dance teacher. The video went viral, first in the school parents groups, then on the family's WhatsApp. In 2 days, I was the talk of the town. The video showed me trying to hide my face, crying while Alejandro insulted me with everything. No one defended me, no one questioned me. Everyone loved to see other people's misfortunes. The studio almost closed. Several parents took their children out of class. Alejandro, after hitting Javier, even called the police. It did not lead to anything legal, but morally. He destroyed me right there, in front of everyone. And worse, with reason. I went home alone that night. Alejandro had disappeared with Isabella. He picked her up from school and disappeared. I kept calling him, sending him messages, begging him. Nothing. His silence hurt more than his screams. The messages I received were even worse. You deserve to die. What kind of mother does that? My family turned their backs on me. My mother-in-law, who had always been sweet, called me to tell me I would never go near her granddaughter again. I sat on the living room floor for hours, in shock, listening and rewatching the video that had already circulated throughout the neighborhood. It was like watching my own public execution. I dreamed of the scene for days. That frozen moment when Alejandro looked me in the eyes and understood everything. It was not just the betrayal, it was the use of our daughter, her time, her innocence, to justify my escape. It was the destruction of trust, of dignity. I had no way to defend myself. There was no explanation that did not sound like a dirty excuse. Because it was dirty, it was real. I cheated and I got caught like a stupid teenager. Only now it was different. I had a daughter, a life, a husband who loved me, and I destroyed it all with my own hands. The studio scandal was just the beginning. Alejandro did not stop there. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than his fury. He remained silent, he disappeared for days, and when he returned, he did so with cold, calculated, lethal actions. He did not just want to leave me, he wanted to make me pay. And I paid. Every lie, every hidden kiss, every muffled moan in a ballroom, nothing escaped his emotional justice. Because when a man like Alejandro is betrayed, he does not take revenge with words. He destroys in silence. After the scandal, Alejandro left home with Isabella and never returned. There was no fight, no speeches, just emptiness. In a matter of days, he transferred everything he could to his name. The bills, the car, even the rent were in his father's name, and I did not even know. I was left with a suitcase of clothes, some furniture, and a deafening silence. I went to my sister's house, who reluctantly took me in. She did not want to involve her nephews. She said the neighbors were already talking too much. I slept on the living room sofa and tried not to cry out loud in the middle of the night. I was no longer a wife, a mother, or a homemaker. I was a walking mistake. The worst part was losing Isabella. Alejandro obtained a temporary custody order, alleging emotional instability and exposing the child to an inappropriate environment, all based on the recorded scandal. He had videos, screenshots, witnesses. I had nothing. When I tried to pick up my daughter from school, the principal stopped me. I cried so much that day that I had to be medicated in the emergency room. I called Alejandro in tears, begging to see Isabella. He sent me a single message: "You will not use her again." I had become a threat, a toxic presence. And deep down, maybe he was right. The teacher, Javier, tried to find me the following days. He sent me messages, he tried to call me, he even waited for me once at the door of my sister's house. But when I saw him there, so handsome, with the same smile as always, I got angry. Deep down, I knew it. He never loved me, Javier. He just liked the game, the adrenaline of having a married woman at his feet. When the scandal broke, he did not defend me, he did not try to stop Alejandro. He remained silent, humiliated, and then he disappeared for days. I blocked him from everything. Not out of dignity, but because every time I saw his name on the screen, I remembered what I had lost. My friends disappeared. My colleagues at the clinic started treating me like a burden. The coordinator called me and told me they were reorganizing the team. I got the message. I was fired weeks later. Without just cause, but also without compassion. It affected me a lot. I had no husband, no daughter, no house, no job. I became the laughingstock of a WhatsApp group, the subject of gossip in the supermarket queues. Everyone had an opinion. I always suspected that saint. She never smiled at her husband. The teacher was too handsome for her to resist. I was the story everyone loved to tell because it was not about them. The loneliness gnawed at me from the inside. I started drinking at night so I could sleep. I would shower crying, trying to wash off the skin marked by Javier's hands. I tried to see Isabella once at the school gate, from a distance. She saw me, she looked at me, and then she looked away. It hurt more than any slap. I was no longer a mother. I was the woman who destroyed everything. And Alejandro, in silence, watched. He no longer threatened me, he no longer cursed me. He simply let time swallow me up. And it worked, because guilt, when it hits, does not scream. It whispers every night. I even thought about disappearing, moving to another city, cutting ties, and starting over. But I could not. I was trapped in that little town, with that stained name, with that story everywhere. What I had done resonated. The street where the school was, the dance studio, the clinic where I worked, the cafe where I met Javier before our dates. Everything reminded me of the mistake. A mistake that at first seemed minor and that now weighed on me like an anchor. I knew that Alejandro was not done with me yet because the worst was yet to come. Alejandro was never one to shout, and perhaps that is why his revenge was so devastating. While I was trying to pull myself together, he planned my destruction with calm, precision, and coldness. He filed a lawsuit for permanent custody of Isabella, attaching reports from psychologists who did not even know my name, but who his lawyer knew how to manipulate. He used everything, the video, the audios, the conversations he managed to recover from my phone after a technician restored the backup. Yes, he had my phone unlocked and found much more than I imagined. Photos, videos, messages in which I spoke ill of him. Everything became evidence, and I had no defense. He began to spread what he found in closed circles, the ones that really mattered, in my mother's church group, in the mother's group at Isabella's school, on WhatsApp, at the school where my niece studied. People began to avoid me. They looked at me as if I were contagious. One of the most intimate videos with Javier reached my ex-boss, the owner of the clinic. I do not know how, but I know it was him. He did not need proof. Only someone with so much cold blood and a thirst for emotional justice would do that. Alejandro wanted to take everything from me, even my reputation. And he was succeeding. He hired a lawyer who looked like a predator. He sent me notifications with terrifying legal terms. He cited me for emotional abandonment of my daughter. He said I was emotionally unstable and sexually incapable of living with a minor. I asked for help from the public defender's office, but the line was long and time was not on my side. Meanwhile, Alejandro seemed increasingly calm. He accompanied Isabella as the heroic father who protected his daughter from a promiscuous mother. People applauded him. They said he was strong, that he had the courage to do what many men would not. And I was already the hidden trash. Financially, he left me penniless. He made tacit agreements with the banks and blocked my access to the joint account. The house where we lived was put up for sale, and the contract was not in my name. Even the car I used to take my daughter to school was towed away because it was registered in his company's name. He made sure I had no way to get around, to work, to start over. It was surgical. He destroyed me. Not with punches, but with clauses and signatures. While I was despairing, he smiled from a distance, sure that every blow was deserved. And in part, it was. It was pointless to try to contact him. Any message was ignored or answered coldly. I even wrote letters. I asked his mother for help, and I sent gifts to Isabella in secret. Nothing worked. Alejandro spread the word among all our acquaintances that I was unstable, dangerous, and that I could harm his daughter. And no one dared to contradict him. After all, the evidence was there, recorded. The married woman who had sex with the dance teacher during her daughter's school hours. The trial was summary, and the sentence eternal. There was no crueler court than the collective gaze of those who knew me. The most painful thing was realizing that he did not do it just out of anger. He did it out of love, a wounded love that turned into pure resentment. Alejandro truly loved me, I know that now. And that is why he wanted me to feel the full weight of what I did. He did not hit me or curse me after the studio, but he made me live the humiliation day after day. He made me ashamed to go out on the street. He turned me into a ghost of what I once was. And I felt it all. Every step, every loss, every silence. It was the perfect revenge, because it still hurts. Javier tried to keep in touch during the first few weeks after the scandal. He would send me messages telling me he was sorry, that everything had gotten out of control, that he did not want it to end like this. I did not reply. I was disgusted. I was disgusted with myself for believing any sweet word that came out of his mouth. He was a natural seducer, a manipulator disguised as an artist. When everything fell apart, he disappeared. He did not go to classes, the studio was closed for a while, and the rumors spread. Many parents demanded his dismissal, others threatened to sue the space for allowing inappropriate behavior with married mothers. The studio tried to cover up the story, but his name was already tarnished. The scandal video circulated more than any advertising campaign. Parents no longer wanted their children near him, even though he had no relationship with them. His image was destroyed. A man who slept with his students' mothers during school hours did not inspire trust, no matter how talented he was. The studio owners ended up firing him. They said it was a mutual agreement, but everyone knew he had been kicked out. Javier tried to open his own course shortly after, and no one showed up for the inauguration. Someone pasted printed copies of the video on the wall of the building where he lived. An anonymous prankster spray painted the hood of his car red with the word "bastard" written on it. It was not me. Alejandro would not have been so obvious either. But someone somewhere thought he should pay too. And he did. The looks I received were of contempt. The ones he received were of threat. A man who destroys a family is even more forgiven than a woman who cheats on him. But when that man does that to the daughter of a respected engineer in a small, gossipy neighborhood, he stops being just a lover. He becomes a public enemy. He looked for me one last time. He showed up at the cafe where I used to go with Alejandro, as if he wanted to revive something. He sat in front of me and looked at me with that same crooked smile as always. He said he still thought about me, that things could be different. I looked him in the face for long seconds, and I realized how much of an illusion it had all been. The passion, the game, the secret encounters, none of it was real. He wanted to be desired. I wanted to be seen. That was all. Two voids trying to fill each other. I got up and I left, for the first time, without regret. Only with the bitter taste of truth. Today, I do not know where he is. I heard he moved, that he went to teach in another state, that he tried to start over with a different stage name. Javier never apologized to me. He never acknowledged the magnitude of the damage. He thought it was my fault. And maybe it was, but he knew. He saw my ring, he met my daughter, he heard me lie for him, and still, he went on. He took advantage, like so many others. He was not to blame for everything, but he was an accomplice. And he deserved every closed door, every threat, every fall. Because when you play with a family's heart, no one forgets. In the end, Javier became a ghost, a name no one mentions, a face erased from social media, a memory that burns. I carry the shame, he carries the trail of destruction. Maybe he is fine now, maybe not. But seriously, I do not care. He was the match, I was the alcohol, and Alejandro was the burning house. We all lost. But he got hurt more than all of us. There are nights when I wake up sweating, with my heart racing, with the image of my daughter's gaze piercing me like a knife. It is always the same dream. She sees me at the school gate and looks away. And I wake up in tears, suffocated by a regret that seems to have no end. It is not just about the betrayal, it is about having thrown my daughter's innocence into my filth. I used her time as an excuse, I used her name, I used her image. And today, she cannot even call me mom, because deep down, I became a stranger who hurt everything she loved most, her father. Guilt is a furtive thing. At first, it does not scream, it whispers. It reminds me of the ring I was wearing when I took off my shirt in the dressing room. It reminds me of the times Alejandro would ask me if everything was okay, and I would tell him, of course, honey, with my phone hiding dirty messages from Javier. Guilt does not come when you lie, it comes when the lie has nowhere left to hide. And even then, I tried to justify it. I told myself I was needy, that I needed attention, that Alejandro was distant. But now I see it, all of that was cowardice. I chose to cheat, and I chose it consciously. Yes, I tried to apologize. I sent Alejandro a long letter. I explained every step, every reason, every regret. He replied with a single sentence, "You destroyed everything." I tried to record videos for Isabella, sending them through my lawyer, asking her to listen to my voice. I never knew if she saw them. The only response was silence, emptiness. It is cruel to know that my daughter is ashamed of me. And no matter how much they say that everything heals with time, there are things that never heal. I became the painful memory she tries to erase, the mistake she will carry with her when they ask her why her parents separated. Today, when I see families gathered for birthdays, parents hugging their children, couples arguing over silly things, I feel as if I am outside of this world, an emotional exile. I could have had all of that, in fact I did, and I wasted it for secret meetings, for affectionate messages, for an inner void that I tried to fill in the worst possible way. Guilt absorbs me, it sabotages me, It prevents me from loving again, from trusting myself, from smiling without remembering. It appears even in the most insignificant moments: an advertisement for a dance school, the smell of male perfume, a romantic song. It is like a prison without bars. People think that public shame is the worst punishment. It is not. The worst punishment is to continue living after destroying the one who loved you most. It is knowing that I will never see Alejandro smiling at me again, that I will never be the mother my daughter knew, that even if he forgives me one day, the bond is broken. It is knowing that I was the weapon against my own happiness. The worst thing about guilt is that it does not disappear. It just learns to walk by your side. And with every step I take, it reminds me, it was you. You who started it, you who ended it, you who lost everything. If I could go back in time, I do not know if I would avoid that first kiss. Because my worst part still looks for justifications, still says, but you were unhappy, but he was cold, but you needed it. I fight this every day because acknowledging guilt is a constant process. It is not an apology, it is a daily decision not to be that person again. But what if I still am? What if, deep down, that impulse still exists in me? That is what scares me the most, because I can handle the guilt. What I do not know if I can handle is trusting myself again. Today, my life is different, but not for the better. I live in a tiny apartment, rented with the help of a distant cousin who took pity on me. I went back to working part-time as a clerk. The salary barely covers the basic bills, but it is what I can do, with my name branded everywhere. I have no leftovers or plans, just days and days of silence. I do not have a car. I walk or take the bus. Every time I run into someone I know, I notice their sideways glances. Some pretend not to see me, others seem to think, that is the woman from the video. And I look down, as if apologizing with my body were enough. Isabellas still does not talk to me. Alejandro has forbidden me any direct contact. Everything must be requested through a lawyer, and even when we tried to start family mediation, my daughter remained silent the whole time. She did not look at me, she did not answer me, she did not cry. She just sat there, as if she wanted to get her punishment over with quickly. This killed me. The little girl I held in my arms, who slept on my chest, who told me, "I love you, Mommy." Now she looks at me as if I were a stranger. Sometimes I pray that she has erased the image of the studio, but I know she has not. Children feel, and she felt everything. I do not have any friends anymore, none. The few people who tried to stand by me soon gave up. They said I was not helping myself, that I was living buried in the past. And maybe that is true. How do you move on when everything you were has died? My sister is still in touch, but always at a distance. She helps me when she can, but she also tells me, "You have to get out of this, Camila." But how do you get out of a place that lives inside of me? I no longer live in the same house, but the memory of what I did follows me like a shadow. Every place is a reminder, even the mirror, especially the mirror. I tried to get involved with other people, but nothing lasts. One man tried to get close, kind, patient. Ugh, another tried something casual, and I shut myself down. I am afraid of wanting it again, afraid of repeating myself, afraid of deceiving myself. The betrayal also stole that from me, my self-confidence. I cannot believe I am capable of loving without hurting, without lying, without destroying. So I isolate myself, I lock myself up, I punish myself before anyone else, because I prefer loneliness to the possibility of making a mistake again. And that is not life, it is survival. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had asked for help before, if I had told Alejandro I felt lonely, that I needed affection, that I was losing myself. Maybe he would have listened, maybe not. But at least I would have tried. Instead, I chose the most selfish path, the easiest one, and I left a trail of pain that will never disappear. The scars are not visible, but they're in every word I did not say, in every lost hug, in every birthday I spend alone. And above all, in the absence of the mom I never heard again. What have I learned? That a single mistake can destroy a whole life. That love, when betrayed, becomes sharper than hatred. That children never forget. That dignity is difficult to rebuild. And that sometimes, forgiveness is something you will never receive, and you have to learn to live with it. Today I am a woman wounded inside and out, but I am still trying. Because despite everything, I still wake up every day, and that, just that, is sometimes a small victory. If today I could look Alejandro in the eyes, I would not ask for his forgiveness again, because he already knows I am sorry, because there is no excuse that works anymore, no words that can erase what I did. I would just like to tell him that, despite everything, I loved him. In a confused, needy, and silent way, but I loved him. And maybe he will never believe it, maybe he will think it was all a lie, but it was not. I made a mistake by trying to fill a void, but the hole that was left after losing him was 1,000 times worse than the loneliness I felt in my marriage. Because now it is a void with a name, with a face, with a memory. I wanted to say that I missed the calm with which he made coffee, his silence on Sunday nights, the look he would give Isabella when he thought no one was watching. I did not appreciate it. I did not realize that that was also love. But his love was subtle, contained, and I was selfish for wanting more, for demanding that he adapt to my desires instead of trying to understand him. I focused so much on what I thought was missing that I did not see everything we already had. He loved me as he knew how to love, and I destroyed him for a passing whim that never had a future. If I had him in front of me now, I would tell him, "You were a good man, better than I deserved at the time." He was honest, dedicated, loyal. Perhaps with some shortcomings, but never cruel, never cold out of malice. I destroyed a home on impulse, and yet, he never chased me with scandals. His revenge was calculated, yes, but based on pain, not on pure hatred. And that, in a way, showed me how much bigger he was than all of that, bigger than me. He did not just want to hurt me, he wanted to show me who I really was. And he succeeded. I also wanted to talk about Isabella. To tell her that I loved her more than anything in the world, that I still love her. That every night I spend without hearing her voice is a crueler punishment than any judgment. I do not expect her to forgive me now, maybe not even someday. But I wanted her to know that, deep down, it all started because I lost myself. Not because of her, not because of my father, just because of me. For not knowing how to ask for help, for not knowing how to say, "I am bad." For not understanding that being a mother and a wife also means facing one's own ghosts. And I fled mine. If I could go back, no, I would not do everything the same. I would go back to the first flirtation with Javier and I would leave. I would say no before the first lie was born. And if Alejandro asked me what was wrong, I would tell him everything. I would cry, I would scream, I would fight. But I would fight for what we had. Because now I understand that cheating is not just a physical act, it is abandoning the other person without moving on. And that is what I did long before I slept with another man. I was already cheating when I stopped trying, when I decided to be silent, when I pretended that love had to come ready-made, instead of being built. Alejandro, if you ever read this, you should know that I never hated you for anything you did afterwards. I understood every step, every blow, every absence. You loved me deeply, and I destroyed it with my own hands. I know there is no going back, and I am not writing for that reason. I just wanted you to know that I still carry you in everything, in the aroma of coffee, in the sound of the rain, in the silence of dawn. And even if you never look at me again, I will always look at you with the love I learned to recognize too late.